One Dark Window by Sarah Gillig is a romantasy novel that follows a character, Elspeth, who has become infected with a disease that causes people to get magic. Within this world, there are a series of cards. The cards contain magic, and the cards are the only legal way to do magic. So the infection itself has been is considered to be illegal, and the people who have this infection and have this magic end up being ostracized from society. They are either sent into the mist, which I'll talk about in a bit, or they are executed or killed. Elspeth is a character who, part of her infection, well, let's start with the cards. So the cards are created, they're like years before the novel takes place. There is a shepherd king who trades things to the forest spirit in order to, or the spirit of the woods, in order to get magic. So in the narrative, through the narrative, we learn that people used to go to the spirit of the woods to have magic done. There was always some amount of bartering. Magic has a cost in this universe. The king did this in order to get Providence cards, and as the Providence cards were created, a society evolved around the Providence cards, where the Providence cards were the only legal form of magic. So one of the things about this book that is the most interesting is the Providence cards. Like, I think the idea of the Providence cards and the way magic works was super interesting, and I was super excited to kind of explore that. I think that worked really well. One of the other things for me that I liked was a lot of the backstory and lore of the world. Like, I liked the world building a lot, and I thought that the world was pretty interesting, and this idea, you know, I think in a lot of ways, there's a lot of throughout history, there's been a lot of myths where magic is viewed as this sort of curse on people. And in a lot of ways, the infection in this book is viewed that way. I want to talk about the romance elements. The main love interest, Raven, is a character who is a member of the Destriers, the captain of the Destriers, which that was such an annoying phrase. By the end of the book, I thought if I heard captain of the Destriers one more time, I was going to go live in a lesbian commune in the woods. I found the romance of this book to not be particularly to my liking. A lot of the romance and romantasy books, I know that this is a criticism that is levied at them a lot, and I know it's a criticism that is not taken by many of the people who read these books, but I do feel like all of these books are the same, right? Like, I think that the romance, the couples in all these books, it's the same couple. The love interest is this same guy who, you know, is, you know, this dark-haired, tall, like, kind of emotionally detached guy who is then, you know, cured of this by the main character in some ways, and then the conflict in their relationship is that he doesn't open up to her, he doesn't trust her, and she's hiding something from him. The conflict in these books is the same conflict a lot of the times. In this book, I kept thinking that what I wanted was for the character Jesper, who is the main love interest's sister, and is also pretty badass, to be the love interest. Like, I kept wanting this to be a lesbian romance, because one, there are some, like, I do think that this novel is kind of ripe with potential for, like, lesbian fan fiction, because Elspeth does view Jesper as this, like, fearsome warrior who she kind of like there's a lot of ways in which she, the way she talks about Jesper in some moments is that she is scared of Jesper, but also kind of looks up to Jesper. Like, there's scenes where she is sort of looking up to Jesper. There's one quote in particular where she says, you know, Jesper is entirely more fearsome than me. I look like a stable boy. And I was like, this line could be extracted into a whole lesbian romance between the two of them. I really am at the point where I think I'm going to stop reading romantasy books for a while, or at the very least, I'm only going to read them when they are queer couples, because I do really feel like a lot of these books are the same. There is a sense in which part of this book was extremely up my alley because the relationship between Elspeth and the nightmare. So Elspeth, as a child, touches the nightmare card, which is one of the Providence cards, and the magic that is manifested in her as part of being cursed, as part of being infected, is that she absorbs the Providence cards into herself. So she absorbs the nightmare into her own body, and then the nightmare is in the back of her brain, and she has a lot of like conversations with the nightmare. There's a sense in which this book was extremely my vibe because that interaction is an interaction that I really enjoyed as part of Bloodmarked, which is another one of these kind of romance fantasy books, although Bloodmarked is more young adult, and I would say One Dark Window is kind of new adult. So the age range is a little bit older than Bloodmarked. And then I was really like intrigued by that. I found the character of the nightmare himself to be pretty annoying. Like, he spoke in these rhymes, but not always. So sometimes he would speak in rhymes and sometimes he wouldn't. I found myself reading like the epitaphs at the beginning of chapters, and then the epitaph is like kind of a poem. So I would read the epitaph and then I would get stuck in that lyrical rhythm of the book to read the rest of the book. And that hurt me a little bit for the book. I also switched, halfway through I switched to the audiobook, and when I did that, I found myself enjoying the book a lot more. Because I think when I was reading it, my head voice for reading this book was a lot more serious than the narrative portrayal of this book, which was a lot more jovial and kind of a little silly at times, right? Like, the voices that the narrators gave the characters were much sillier than the voices that I was giving the characters when I read it, and that helped me kind of enjoy this book a lot more. I think I did get to a point where I was just getting exhausted. Like, I found Raven and Elm to be so boring as characters. They were not unique. They weren't different from, say, they weren't different from, say, Xander, who, not Xander, Xaden from the Fourth Wing books. I found them to be sort of the same kind of character, this like emotionally closed off, distant, kind of dark, but still kind of mysterious and a little bit, and hot. Like, that character to me, like, I feel like that well has just been tapped dry, and there's not really a lot that someone could do with that character that I would find interesting at this point, because it just seems really, really cliche and rote. And it's not a character that I want to spend more time with. So that part didn't really work for me, and I don't know, I was really bored. And maybe it's just that I've read too many of these books recently. Like, maybe it's just that I've read so many of these books at this point that I'm burned out on them, and maybe taking a break to read other things, or just not reading some of these that are maybe queer and not these heteronormative versions of this story might help me to enjoy this genre again. I did find myself really liking the lore and the backstory of this world. That was one of the things that kept me reading, is like trying to understand who the nightmare is, trying to understand how the Providence cards were created and what was traded in order to make the Providence cards, understanding, Elspeth's relationship to the nightmare and the nightmare's relationship to this entire society of people who are using these cards, how the cards themselves have a cost, and people are succumbing to the cost of that, right? Like, Elm, in this book, Elm pays a cost for using the Scythe card. The relationship between Elspeth and Ione is also pretty interesting. Ione gets a card called the Maiden, and the Maiden gives you this like limitless beauty, but the cost of it is that it turns you cold. And initially, when Ione and Elspeth were first talking about this card, I was a little sad that Ione had taken this card, because I was kind of worried that would mean that Elspeth would be separated from her cousin, who she has kind of a sisterly relationship to, and oh wait, I think it's her cousin. I might be mixing some stuff up in my head, but I think it's her cousin who she has a sisterly relationship with, and is clearly a huge important part of her life, but then is now off to be betrothed to Hoth, and that betrothal comes with a maiden card, and that, you know, has a whole series of consequences for Elspeth and Ioni's relationship. We're going to start to get into a little bit of spoilers here, because this relationship, I wanted more of it, and I was so happy later in the book when, I was surprised, to be honest, when Ione covers for Elspeth later, and it made me wonder if maybe there's an aspect of the maiden card that we don't know yet, and maybe that'll get fleshed out in the next book. Because I came to, like, I was sad for Ione in the beginning of the book, and then towards the end of the book, I was like, oh, I want to see who she is, and I kind of want her to join, you know, these other characters in their pursuit to unite the deck and end the curse. So I think that is something that I would be looking forward to the next book. I do plan on reading it. I'll probably listen to it. I'm not going to read it right away. I think I'm going to wait until I've read some other books that don't that are you know, in a different space a little bit. Just because, like, I feel like I need a break from these kinds of books. And yeah, so I think, you know, I liked this book. I don't know what I would give it in terms of a star rating, but I think I'm just a little bit bored by some of the characters, and I'm especially bored by the romance elements of this book and books like it, books in the same sort of genre and vein. And I found, you know, the way that Elspeth talks about Raven to be really annoying. Like she keeps referring to him as the captain of the Destriers, and I swear if I hear that term one more time, I'm just gonna, like, go live in the woods and be a hermit. Because, like, it just made me not like her as a character for how she was, like, distancing herself. I think in dialogue it works, because in dialogue when she refers to him as captain, I think there's an element of her distancing herself from him. But she's also, like, referring to him by his title just in her narrative when it's not in dialogue, and that to me was, like, I don't know, it just was annoying to me. So yeah, I don't know, that part of the book didn't really work for me. I like the magic and the world building. I think that part of it was great. I really just want one of these books to comment on kind of the toxicity, the heteronormativity of these books, kind of the sort of like they're like, I don't know, I feel like these books are like, the romances in these books just make me sad, and I want something different. I want something new and unique, because I like romance and I like fantasy, but I find myself reading these books going, like, why can't the main couple be gay? That's really what I keep thinking. I keep thinking, like these are books that I just want them to be different than I want the romance to explore other types of romances. I don't even need, I really do want like a lesbian romance book. I really do want that. But I would be happy if the main character just fell for a different guy. Like, that would be a step in the right direction for me. Like, can she fall in love with an accountant? I don't know. This is probably not a very satisfying video. I don't know. I guess if you like romantasy, you'll probably like this book. It is darker than other books, although I think I liked the audiobook because it was sillier. So that's where I've ended up with this book. This is probably not a very satisfying review, and I'm sorry, but yeah. I plan on reading a lot more queer fiction coming up. I'm already reading Gideon the Ninth, and I just started Wrath Goddess Sing, so those are some books to look forward to me talking about. I like both of those books so far, although Gideon was very slow, so we'll see what I think about it when I actually finish it. Yeah. that feels like a good place to end it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all later. Well, I won't see you, but you'll see me later. You know, you see what I'm saying? Yeah, all right. Bye.